Hi, my name is Beth Hiley here for Board Game Geek at SPIEL 2016. I'm with Travis Chance of one of the two Travises of Indie Boarding Cards.
The Travi.
Oh yeah, nice. Yeah. You brought us Aeon's End, which is one of the collaborative games between you and Action Phase Games.
Correct.
And is a pretty meaty box.
It's pretty big.
And hoping there's a nice meaty game on the inside.
There is, there is. So this is, it's a deck builder, but don't change the channel yet. This is the deck builder to end all deck builders. Don't change the channel yet. No, actually, so we met a new designer named Kevin Riley. He has an interesting background. He's a professional StarCraft player and video game player. Lived abroad in Asia, and that was his job. He approached us at not this last Origins, but Origins before, and he's like, I have solved problems with the deck building genre. And of course, I'm thinking I've heard this
quite the hook.
I've heard this 100 times. We sat down and we were immediately impressed. So long story short, we took the game on, and slowly but surely became a cooperative game. And it has this real video game kind of MMO. Am I saying it's MMO?
Yeah, massive multiplayer online.
I don't play video games. This MMO type vibe where the theme of the game is the players take the role of breach mages, which are these elite survivors of this sort of apocalyptic attack on a fantasy world. Don't change the channel yet. And what we're fighting is against these creatures, kind of like called the Nameless. So think like Cthulhu meets Attack on Titan type thing. So we're defending the last bastion of humanity against these monsters and their minions. And so over the course of the game, we're each going to take the role of a mage, and we're going to start with classic. It's like a Dominion style market, which I stupidly did not put any of the cards out. There's a lot of components. And we're all going to start with cards, and we're going to buy from a market of cards. But the game features a number of very different elements and very streamlined elements for the deck building genre. So one thing is we obviously have unique characters.
Right.
Not only does our character have a unique ability, but we have a unique starting hand, a unique starting draw deck. We have a unique configuration of these breaches, which I'll talk about in a second. And we also sort of like a unique function in terms of the game, like we're a support role, kind of like an MMO. It's like I'm the glass cannon, I'm the tank type thing. So this game, there's no shuffling in this deck builder.
Wow.
So when you buy a card, it goes to your discard pile, and then you kind of play all your cards out in front of you that you play on your turn, and then you get to choose the order in which those go to your discard pile. So that's one of the key differences. And then when you would draw a card, you simply flip your discard pile over.
Cycles up.
So, yes, and so this allows for a lot more strategic planning and a higher level of cooperation. So one of the other goals in this game was to sort of negate the alpha gamer issue, which really has more to do with personalities. I know people say this, but it really has more to do with personalities than it does with games. But this game has tactics and strategy, which make it very hard for one person to kind of hone in on what the best play is. It usually has to be a discussion amongst players, and no one person, we're a team, no one person is the best, no one person can do everything. So we have to kind of divide the labor across our characters. Another interesting feature the game has is, so if you think of games like Star Realms where there's like a damage mechanism, so in this game we have spells, but we have to actually put them on these cards called breaches, these little square cards. And so the idea thematically is these portals that these monsters come through, the mages have learned to kind of use them as a battery and as a weapon. So anytime a breach is open, we simply put the spell on there. In other games, it would just be you play the spell, it does damage, it goes away. So now I don't get to cast a spell until my next turn comes up. So there's a delay.
Also kind of fits into the deck builder.
Correct. So there's a delay. So that also means that we have to do a higher level of coordination because there's just not this thoughtless, instantaneous process. The breaches, we all have a unique configuration of breaches. Some are open. Some characters have multiple open breaches. Some have no open breaches. And the interesting mechanism in this is that this here, you can pay this amount of the resource in the game, which is called Aether, to open the breach. And that just means you flip it over and now you can put spells in there. Or you can focus the breach, which is kind of think of it as rent to own. So you rotate it to its next cheapest clockwise, and then that will make it cheaper for you to buy in the future, and then you can put a spell on there temporarily. So another thing that's really clever about this game is it gives you a lot of options for how to use your resources. So I can make this cheaper knowing that I don't have enough now, so I can invest in it for later. I can charge my ability once my ability is fully charged. I wipe all the tokens off and I can use that. And the effects are very powerful and very useful. It's not like a lot of these deck builder games where you have this sort of gross combos that just keep happening and happening. You have to kind of build up over time. And to go back to this mechanism here with the delay, the game features a turn order deck. So this adds to kind of this real feeling of combat, like we're fighting in a fight and there's no certainty. So there's no determinism. So while we don't shuffle and our deck is deterministic, the turn order is not. So it's always comprised of 6 cards, 2 Nemesis cards, which is the bad guy, and then there'll always be 4 mage player turns. And depending on the number of players, if there's 2 players, each player will have 2.
Right.
If there's 3, there's a wild card and 1 for each player. If there's 4, there's 1 for each player. So we shuffle this up, not knowing who's going to get to go in what order. So we have to plan and hedge toward all of our best options, knowing that if things don't go the way we want, we have to have a contingency.
That feels very video game too,
Correct.
where different spells might change that initiative order.
Correct. And so for example, if the Nemesis is the last 2 cards, that's great. We've had 4 turns, 4 opportunities to plan. Then the Nemesis goes 2 turns in a row, and when it's empty, you shuffle it up. Well, what if the Nemesis gets 2 more turns in a row? So you can lose a lot of ground there. So the game is a very higher difficulty. It's not unbeatable, but it's certainly meant to put you through your paces.
Now, I just want to highlight the fact that you've got some awesome bad guy life counters over here.
So the game features multiple ways to win and multiple ways to lose. So the ways you can win are you reduce the nemesis is plural, nemesis's life to 0, or you make it all the way through the Nemesis's deck. And I stupidly didn't grab any Nemesis cards. And the Nemesis deck is tiered in difficulty 1, 2, 3. So as the game progresses, it will get harder. If you reduce his life to 0, its life to 0, or you survive the onslaught of their entire deck, you win the game. The good guys lose if the city, which is just this sort of it's got 30 points of life, is reduced to 0, then that's it.
Humanity's toast.
Correct. Or all players' lives are reduced to 0. When a player's life is reduced to 0, they're not out of the game. They simply don't, anytime they would take damage, it's dealt 2-fold to the city instead. They have to blow up a breach and they lose all their charges. So you can game that to where you're like, all right, we're going to let one guy suck it up, but it's really
okay for the city to take a hit so we can do this other thing.
Yep. And one of the last, I think, really neat feature of the game is each Nemesis is entirely different than the next, and in a more appreciable way than I think in most games. So we have this general keyword. This is called Unleash. So a lot of the cards in the Nemesis deck, there'll be some that are basic Nemesis cards, and there'll be some that are specific to that Nemesis, so that their strategy works. So they're all trying to win in different ways. So the Prince of Gluttons here, he wants to eat all the cards in the market. And thematically, he's eating the history of these people, their memories, their culture. If he succeeds in doing that, the good guys lose the game. That's what's an additional lose clause. The Crooked Mask wants to shuffle cards into the player's deck, so he's going to mess up the treadmill mechanic, and he's going to give you these cards that give you a bonus, but also a penalty. So it'll be like, someone's got to take 3 damage, but they get to draw a card. So it's this push-pull that makes it really interesting. Rageborn is just super mad, and and he builds up his anger, and then he attacks. So he does these sort of instantaneous effects. And the Carapace Queen uses this track over here, so she spawns these little things called husks, and whenever she has a card that says Swarm, you check to where she's at, and you can lose the game if there's too many, and there's additional penalties. So it adds for a lot of tension and variability while having a simple, understandable term. You don't have to relearn the game with each Nemesis.
Well, and variability if you're playing different characters as well. So it's a lot of combos to mix and match.
Yes.
So, let me grab that big old box in there again. If you guys want to check that out, that is a brief overview of Aeon's End, which is produced by Indie Board and Cards and Action Phase Games. And Travis, thanks so much for letting us take a look.
Take care.